In our daily Bible readings over the past week, we've read through Psalms 120 through 134, and if you noticed, each of those Psalms from 120 through 134 have the title at the top that says A Song of Ascents, or your translation might say A Song of Degrees or A Song of Steps. That's really what the word is often translated as. It's talking about steps. So these are songs about stairs. Kind of reminds me of a line from a play that we saw in Arrow Rock. Sun Records producer Sam Phillips was talking to Carl Perkins, and he asked Carl, "Well, Carl, have you written any new songs?" And Carl Perkins responds, "Yeah, I just wrote a song that's called Blue Suede Shoes." And Phillips looks at him sideways and says, "You wrote a song about your shoes?" Yeah, these are psalms about stairs. And now there's several theories about why these songs are called Songs of Ascents, why they're referring to these stairs going up. Well, some say that these were psalms that were sung while travelers were on their way up to Jerusalem. They're heading up to Jerusalem for the festivals. Every year, 3 times a year, they would travel to Jerusalem for these special festivals. And as they did that, they would sing these psalms. Others say, no, that these psalms were actually for a more specific time period, for when the Israelites were delivered from Babylonian captivity and they were allowed to come back to Jerusalem from exile in Babylon. And so they sung these songs on that occasion. Others say that no, it has nothing to do with that. That Song of Ascents refers to the music that these words are sung to, that it's something about ascending up the musical scale or something like that. The fact of the matter is we don't really know why they are called Songs of Ascents. Any of those possibilities are possible. They could be, but we really don't have enough evidence. We don't know enough about how they were used many centuries ago. What we do know about these 15 Psalms, though, is that they were very obviously and very intentionally grouped together. We see that these 15 are all put one after another, put together within the Psalms. You see, the book of Psalms is like several other books in our Bible that are not a single narrative from start to finish, but instead the Psalms are a collection. You see, the Psalms were different songs that were written over a long period of time, really over probably 500 or 600 years. We know that some Psalms come from David, and he lived 1,000 years before Christ, 1000 BC. And then some of these Psalms refer to the return from exile. That would have happened about 500 BC. So, over 500 years, the Psalms were being written. And then at some point, the 150 Psalms were collected into one group there. And someone had collected them and then, of course, ordered them in a particular order. And when that person did that, they very pointedly collected these 15 Psalms together and titled them Songs of Ascents. Now, the idea that they were sung as pilgrims traveled up to Jerusalem is for the annual festivals is very, very good, very plausible. As you read through the Psalms, you can definitely see that. You could say, well, yeah, it's talking about, I was glad when they said to me, let's go to the house of the Lord. Oh, we're heading up to the house of the Lord. We're heading up to Jerusalem to worship. It makes sense. But really, all the Psalms kind of work that way. All the Psalms are really appropriate for heading up to worship because that's what they're all meant for. So what sets out these songs of ascents? Well, I think they become a great sampling of the Psalms as a whole. They're kind of the Reader's Digest version of the Psalms, if you will. There's 150 Psalms. Wow, that's a big book. That's a lot. Okay, there's 15 songs of ascents. So it's 1/10 the size. It's a much more manageable size. So these Psalms, they are really kind of the condensed version of the Psalms. And we see within them the various types of Psalms that we have. You've got it listed there in your bulletin, the various different types of Psalms. This is not absolute. I mean, there are some types that, people debate, well, is it this one or is it that one? There are some Psalms that could, fit in a couple of different categories. But generally, these are the types of things we see within the Psalms. Some are Psalms of lament. That means complaining. That means crying out to God because life isn't like it should be. You're just saying, God, what is wrong? It's good that the Psalms do that because it shows that it's all right to do that. A lot of times we can be mad at our situation and we can be wondering where God is and wondering what's going on, and it's okay to say that to God. The Psalms tell us to. There are Psalms of lament, not only in all of the Psalms, but I've got it listed for you there within the Songs of Ascent, the ones that seem to be lament Psalms. Then, of course, there are Psalms of praise that are expressing faith in who God is and confidence that He will protect and deliver His people, that God's going to come through. We know, and we're just singing these songs of praise and faith. There's Psalms of thanksgiving that just recount the great works of God, that are just expressing thankfulness and gratitude for the wonderful things that God has done for us. And there are royal Psalms. The royal Psalms look forward to the Messiah, the ultimate King. They are anticipating that coming of that ultimate King that's going to set up His rule like the world is supposed to be, and everything's going to be set right. And then there are wisdom Psalms. Wisdom Psalms basically affirm the truth of God's Word and the blessing that comes from being obedient to Him and following after Him. And looking at all of that, I'd like to suggest to you that you keep these 15 Psalms in mind. These songs of ascent from 120 through 134. Keep them in mind, and they'll help you in your prayer life. Sometimes we don't know what to pray. It's hard to come up with words. We don't know exactly what to say, We might hear other people pray at church and think, wow, that person can really pray. I can never come up with words like that. I don't know how to do that. Well, the Psalms can help you. The Psalms cover a wide spectrum of emotions and circumstances. And you can probably find within the Psalms something that will resonate with you, no matter what your situation might be. Now, looking through the whole 150 Psalms, that could take a while. But if you look to the 15 Songs of Ascent, that gives you something manageable. I can deal with, I can read those, and I might find there something that gives voice to what it is that I'm feeling, what it is I need to say to God. For example, maybe you're having difficulty with some people that you're living around. Anybody got some difficult neighbors that, the things this guy does, the loud music and whatever it is. Or maybe you've got coworkers that, have a little problem with the truth, or lying about things, or maybe they're, stealing credit for things that you've done on the job, or maybe there's people in your family that are always just looking to stir up trouble. You're just stuck with these people that are just, they're always causing problems. Well, maybe the lament of Psalm 120 would help you to express your frustrations. Psalm 120 says, I call on the Lord in my distress, and he answers me. Save me, O Lord, from lying lips and from deceitful tongues. What will he do to you, and what more besides, O deceitful tongue? He will punish you with a warrior's sharp arrows, with burning coals of the broom tree. Woe to me that I dwell in Meshech, that I live among the tents of Kedar. Too long have I lived among those who hate peace. I am a man of peace, but when I speak, they are for war. Here the psalmist expresses frustration at being surrounded by deceitfulness and fighting. He's surrounded by these people that are lying and just, not telling the truth and saying these untrue things about him. And he's stuck, even though he wants to be peaceful and he wants to have a calm and easy life, he's surrounded by these people that are just always out to pick a fight. But even in the midst of that, the psalmist has hope. Even as he's frustrated with his situation, he affirms, I cry to the Lord and he answers. The Lord answers. And the Lord will punish. He's going to take care of that deceitful tongue. He's going to bring justice in the end. It's going to happen. But notice what the psalm does there. It talks about the Lord answering early on in the first verse there, and then about his punishment of the deceitful tongue. But then we end with, woe is me, I dwell among Meshech and Kedar. I dwell amongst these Gentile peoples, far away from Jerusalem, far away from the people of God. I'm stuck around these sinful people. And that's where the psalm ends. The psalmist isn't delivered from his complaint. I've got this problem, all these people I'm stuck with, and at the end of the psalm, he's still stuck with them. God doesn't deliver him from them. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the Lord keeps you there to be a witness. Maybe the Lord needs you to be putting up with those lying lips and those warring peoples that are refusing to be peaceful, because he wants a witness there. Maybe Psalm 120 helps you express your frustration of being stuck around people that are not being very godly. Or how about when you need a reminder about why we gather together as God's church? In Psalm 122, the psalmist is talking about going up and gathering with God's people in Jerusalem. He says, I rejoiced with those who said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. Our feet are standing in your gates, O Jerusalem. Jerusalem is built like a city that is closely compacted together. That is where the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord, to praise the name of the Lord according to the statute given to Israel. There the thrones for judgment stand, the thrones of the house of David. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May those who love you be secure. May there be peace within your walls and security within your citadels. For the sake of my brothers and friends, I will say, peace be within you. For the sake of the house of the Lord our God, I will seek your prosperity. Here David writes in this psalm about the joy in going to worship, that all the worshipers there join together in praise, and that there God rules and that justice is done. That might be contrasted with back in Psalm 120, where the psalmist was living amongst these sinful people, stuck with the lies and the fighting. But here David says, oh, the joy of being together with God's people. And so then he prays for the peace of Jerusalem, and we can understand that as further not just the physical Jerusalem, but as Jesus said, he came not to set up a physical kingdom, that his kingdom was not of this world, but his kingdom resides in the hearts of all those who believe. Well, then, as we gather together, we're We're that New Jerusalem. We are that people of God. And so, as the psalmist prays for the peace of Jerusalem, we can pray for the peace in the church, that the church would be a refuge from the problems of the world, that there would be security and prosperity there, that we would all be gathered together in praise and worship and getting along as we should. And even though the church isn't perfect, this psalm can remind us to commit ourselves to being part of the solution, not part of the problem. Sometimes, though, we need to remember all that God has done for us. We need to count our blessings. We need to recharge that attitude of gratitude. Psalm 126 could be helpful. When the Lord brought back the captive to Zion, we were like men who dreamed. Our mouths were filled with laughter, our tongues with songs of joy. Then it was said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them. The Lord has done great things for us, and we are filled with joy. Restore our fortunes, O Lord, like streams in the Negev. Those who sow in tears will reap with songs of joy. He who goes out weeping, carrying seed to sow, will return with songs of joy, carrying sheaves with him. Psalm 126 is a thanksgiving psalm, giving thanks for God's restoration from Babylonian captivity, talking about those Israelites who had been taken away to Babylon but are now allowed to return and are able to come back to rebuild the city of Jerusalem and to live once again in God's promised land. They are thankful for that restoration, and that the psalm says we're like men who dream. I mean, it's your dream come true. Not only that, the Lord's work is recognized in the world. The other nations look and say, wow, did God do something special for them? So there's great joy. We need to be thankful for all that God has done for us. Thankful for the deliverance that he offers. Thankful for Jesus. Thankful for all that he's given around us. We are thankful for the Lord's rewards. And this psalm not only is thankful, but also is hopeful, looking forward, saying that those who sow in tears will reap in joy. Those that go out with seed weeping return with joy, carrying sheaves with them. The psalm tells us that we can be thankful even in our labors, even when we're just plugging along, just struggling along, and it doesn't seem to be going very well, and nothing seems to be happening. We can be confident that God's word does not return void. We can be confident that if we do not give up, we will reap a harvest. The psalm reminds us to be thankful, even in the midst of our struggles. The Psalms can also refocus us on the central truth of the Scriptures, that God is in control, that Jesus is on his throne. Psalm 132 is a royal psalm. It says, O Lord, remember David and all the hardships he endured. He swore an oath to the Lord and made a vow to the Mighty One of Jacob. I will not enter my house or go to my bed. I will allow no sleep to my eyes, no slumber to my eyelids, till I find a place for the Lord, a dwelling for the Mighty One of Jacob. We heard it in Ephrathah. We came upon it in the fields of Jaar. Let us go to his dwelling place. Let us worship at his footstool. Arise, O Lord, and come to your resting place, you and the ark of your might. May your priests be clothed with righteousness. May your saints sing for joy. For the sake of David, your servant, do not reject your anointed one. The Lord swore an oath to David, a sure oath, that he will not revoke. One of your own descendants I will place on your throne. If your sons keep my covenant and the statutes I teach them, then their sons will sit on your throne forever and ever. For the Lord has chosen Zion. He has desired it for his dwelling. This is my resting place forever and ever. Here I will sit enthroned, for I have desired it. I will bless her with abundant provisions. Her poor will I satisfy with food. I will clothe her priests with salvation, and her saints will ever sing for joy. Here I will make a horn grow for David, and set up a lamp for my anointed one. I will clothe his enemies with shame, but the crown on his head will be resplendent. This psalm looks to the fulfillment of God's promise to David. Jesus, of course, is the fulfillment of that promise. He was born a descendant of David. He defeated death, rising from the grave to live forever. And so he is seated on the throne beside God the Father, and he will come again one day to make all things new. What the psalm and all the Old Testament looked forward to, we now enjoy. Jesus on the throne. While the reality is that Jesus is on the throne, we know that we fall short of the ideal of Psalm 132. So it's good to remind ourselves of the wisdom and blessing of living according to the Lord's command to love one another. And so Psalm 133 is a wisdom psalm that says, how good and pleasant it is when brothers live together in unity. It is like precious oil poured on the head, running down on the beard, running down on Aaron's beard, down upon the collar of his robes. It is as if the dew of Hermon were falling on Mount Zion, for there the Lord bestows his blessing, even life forevermore. Living in unity is a pleasant thing. And in fact, that was the focus of Jesus' prayer in John 17. Before Jesus goes to the cross, he gets by himself and he prays. And his prayer is, let them be one. He wants his followers to be united as one. Just the same thing that this psalm is calling for. Brothers living in unity. That, the psalm says, is like Aaron's ordination. Aaron, you remember, was the first high priest. After the Israelites were delivered from slavery in Egypt and they were taken to Mount Sinai where God gave them the 10 Commandments, Aaron was designated as the high priest, and so Moses was instructed to take this special anointing oil and to pour it on Aaron's head. And so this pictures that ordination of Aaron as the high priest, the oil flowing on his head and down onto his beard and onto his collar. But that very pointedly points out brothers living together in unity. Because you see, it was Aaron's brother Moses who poured that oil on his head. And Moses and Aaron were in unity. And it was a beautiful thing. Moses, you see, could have been jealous. Why wasn't Moses the high priest? I mean, Moses is the guy that God chose. Moses is the guy that God used. Moses is the one that confronted Pharaoh and all. Yeah, Aaron was there with him, but Moses was the guy. He was the one with the staff. He's the one that, raised the staff and parted the Red Sea. He's the one that went up on the mountain and received the 10 Commandments. Aaron was the one that made the golden calf. But Aaron gets to be the high priest. What is up with that? And not only that, Aaron's sons then get to be high priests after him. Moses had sons, but no, his sons didn't get to be high priest. Yeah, Moses could have been upset about all this, but instead, brothers were living together in unity. Instead, each one accepts the role that God has given them to play. Moses accepts his role, and Aaron accepts his role. And they work together in unity, and there is great blessing from that, not only for their family, but for all the Israelites, for the whole nation. It's a wonderful thing when brothers dwell together in unity. It's like Aaron's ordination, or it's like the dew of Hermon falling on Mount Zion. Some think that David wrote this psalm when all 12 tribes were finally united under him as king. You see, Saul had been king, and Saul was rejected, and so David became king first of the southern tribe of Judah. His own tribe recognized him as king. It took the other tribes a little bit longer to come alongside. They followed another guy, a son of Saul, for a little while. But then finally, they all were united and recognized David as their king, the king that God had given them. And so David writes this psalm saying, man, it's a beautiful thing when brothers dwell together in unity, when all the tribes are together. It's like the dew of Hermon. Mount Hermon was in the far north of Israelite territory. And it was upon Mount Hermon that the dew falls, and that fed into the Jordan River, which flowed into the Sea of Galilee, which then flowed out into the Jordan River, which flowed down into the Dead Sea, which, of course, the Jordan and the Sea of Galilee, extremely important water sources for the land of Israel. He said it's like the dew of Hermon in the far north, Israelite territory, falling on Mount Zion in the south, the place in the south of Judah territory. It's all the tribes, all the brothers of Israel joined together, living in unity. That's a beautiful thing. Even today, whenever I hear a song by ELO, Fire on High. Now, you might not know this song, but you probably do. You just don't know the name of it. It was the theme song for the Wide World of Sports television show. And every week on Saturday, that show would come on, and this this guitar theme would be playing, and Jim McKay would come on and say, he'd talk about the thrill of victory, and and the agony of defeat. And there goes that guy wiping out, smash. I mean, every week they showed this guy, just kill himself on that ski slope. I'm charged up every time I hear that song. Anytime I hear that music playing, boy, it just, gets me going. It's like, oh boy, I'm ready to go down that ski slope myself. Better that I don't, because I would end up just like that guy that just wiped out so terribly. See, songs have power to touch us in unique ways. Ways that aren't completely logical, ways that are hard to explain. Have you been driving along, not having a great day? When all kinds of problems are just swirling around in your mind, when all of a sudden a song comes on the radio. A good song, a good old song that you know from way back. And you say, wow, I like this song. And you turn it up. And you start tapping your foot to the beat. And you start singing along with it. All of a sudden your day is a whole lot brighter. Songs can lift us up when we're down. Songs can give voice to feelings deep within us. That's what the Psalms can do. It can be overwhelming to find the right psalm out of the 150, but if you keep in mind these songs of ascents, Psalms 120 to 134, and you look there, you may be able to find just the right psalm that says what you need to hear, or just what you need to say to God. Call out to Him. You can pray back to Him His word. He wants to hear it.